Despite what you might have been told, Edward VI was not in love with the Lady Jane Grey. Edward VI was Henry VIII's only surviving legitimate male heir, and he went on to rule England for about 6 years after Henry VIII's death. He was the first Protestant king to rule over England, and therefore when he was dying, his Protestant council pushed him to skip over his two sisters, Mary I and Elizabeth I, and to name his Protestant cousin Jane Grey as his heir instead. And people seem to think that this is some sort of evidence to prove that he was in love with her. While it is of course true that the wheels were set in motion for Edward to marry the Lady Jane, this never ever went ahead, and it was not considered due to their feelings for one another, but rather because Jane was being used. During Edward VI's reign, his uncles Edward Seymour and Thomas Seymour were basically battling for power within the council. Thomas Seymour, in hopes of gaining more power than his brother, arranged for the Lady Jane to become his ward. This meant that Thomas Seymour was basically now in charge of the fourth in line to the throne. During this time, Elizabeth was also living with Thomas Seymour and Catherine Parr, which made him the holder of both the third in line and the fourth in line. And he was using these two women to hopefully weasel his way to more power. One such way of doing that was by hopefully betrothing Jane to Edward, which Jane's father Henry Grey supported. Henry Grey very much wanted Lady Jane to marry the king, of course, because then Henry Grey's grandchildren would be the next king or queen of England, and Thomas Seymour would have been the orchestrator of the plan. Edward VI, having become king, was of course looking for a bride, and this was mentioned to him. But, as you might have guessed, it didn't go ahead. So, if he was so madly in love with Jane, wouldn't Edward have pushed for this? Wouldn't Edward have been interested in this? His own father had married English subjects. His own mother, Jane Seymour, had been just an English subject. So Edward would have been able to marry an English subject rather than a foreign princess if he'd wanted to. So then, if he was so in love with her, why didn't he? His uncle was pushing for it. Henry Grey was pushing for it. Fair enough, there will have been people who will have been advising him against it, but he's the king. If he was so madly in love with Jane, he would have married her, or at the very least become betrothed. Instead, Edward went on to become betrothed to Elizabeth of Valois, creating a hopefully English-French alliance, but of course, as we know, Edward died at the age of 15 and never managed to conclude the alliance through marriage. There is absolutely no evidence to suggest that Edward was in love with Jane Grey. In fact, there's plenty of evidence to suggest the opposite entirely. There's not a single shred of evidence to suggest that they were romantically interested in one another. Modern media has pushed this to be a love match, of course, because it is fun, it is dramatic, it is entertainment, but let's not get confused with the facts and with fiction.